Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with a man who has been able to see and experience many of the bucket list destinations we all have. From Mongolia through to the Seychelles, he also now brings a modern look to the Texas coast with Dagon Apparel. This is my conversation with Corby Robertson.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it works fine.
Okay.
Do I like it? I wish I had a 30. So I could go 4 or 5 miles an hour faster, which, in tournaments
makes a difference.
Like I can beat somebody to a spot kind of thing.
Heard.
But we're all racing and we're all maxed out at 24 miles an hour. Like that's our tournament. We're like
racing, looking at each other over.
Yeah, like we're not going to 80, 90 miles an hour to our finish spot. We're going like
we're in slow motion.
If you're going 24, you're passing people.
That's so funny. All right. Well, this has been a crazy warm up. I mean, I'm finally here in Houston. It took us a while to do this, but I'm glad we're finally doing it. I got Corby Robertson in the chair today, and just to get it started, run me through your first real memory in the outdoors, and then more so your chronological progression as an outdoorsman, and kind of leading you to where you are in Dagon, or in creating Dagon. Better way to put it.
Sure. It's thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Wow. First memory, I was probably 3 years old, walking around on one of the beaches, Sunday Beach, in fact, in Port Conner, Texas. So, several of your listeners probably been there, and they can only imagine what 1973 being on Sunday Beach may have been like. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of, I grew up in Port Conner, so lots and lots of memories there. In terms of a fishing one, we had a lake that my dad took me to bass fishing in East Texas, and I think I had a Zebco 202 back then, throwing some type of topwater lure, and had a big 5-pound bass grab it. And so fighting it, and I think it took me 15 minutes as a 5-year-old to get it in, and I thought I'd won the lottery or something. So that bass is mounted on my wall.
Is it really?
Yeah. So anyway, I've just been fishing and hunting really from a very, very early age. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of graduated, as people do, from, chunking at the Zebco 202 to figuring out I had an uncle that loved fly fishing, and he lived down the street from where I grew up. And he's like, "Here, come, I'll teach you how to throw a fly rod." That was age 8. Mm-hmm. And then had grandparents that had a house in Port Conner.
Do you remember which rod it was? Which rod, the first one you ever held? Oh,
geez. I think it was a Winston rod.
Oh, interesting. So it was most people say like Fluger, Medalist, beginner stuff, but you went right into you went to the top tier.
Yeah, I guess so. Which I'm not a big fan of Winston anymore. But we can get into what types of rods too. But so anyway, so I used to walk down after school was out, like 5 o'clock ish. He'd be back home from his office, and knock on the door. His name was Lex. Uncle Lex, will you pull that 8-weight out and show me how to do it? So that's kind of cut my teeth on that, and would go piddle around in Port Conner, and put down the Zebco 202, or I finally got into bait casters, but at some point. But anyway, do a little fly fishing and walk around in the shallows trying to catch redfish.
Remember your first one?
My first one, I don't remember my first one. Well, I caught multiple ones. I can't remember a specific time. Mm-hmm. But as I got into college, I can remember going more and more and not conventional fishing anymore. And before, that was
10 years apart, right? From when you got the fly rod to when you started focusing more on fly fishing?
1990, and skiffs were not really that big a thing. Like people couldn't even get a boat into Pringle Lake.
Yeah. So those when scooters were taking off too, and then
scooters were taking off. You literally had to wade through all that mud to get into Pringle. So that's kind of, I was waiting around I think this was on Grass Island, actually, is where I can remember my first one that I waded out in some of those back lakes off grassy and stepping through the mud, and, pot of redfish pops up, and, hook one and bring it in. And that's like my first real memory, but I was catching them at a younger age.
Yeah.
They're all city slickers and just walking the shoreline
Gotcha.
around that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. It was more so like any like notable memories and stuff like that. Things that kind of like, you look back on fondly. That's more so what I was getting at. More so than just like, your first one.
So, I mean, there's kind of your first buck that you killed. We was hunting with my dad and had a hunting lease down in Maverick County, and got out one morning, super cold. Sometime around Christmas time, when the rut's going on, he rattled up a 8-point buck that came out of nowhere, and shot that. So that was that was kind of a cool memory, getting your first buck. I think I was.
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself prepping for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a shout.
Somewhere around 9 years of age.
So both passions started, it's almost like simultaneously.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then we had a lot of fun memories. My grandparents on my mom's side called my grandfather Big Daddy. He used to take me almost every weekend to Port Connor, and then it was his hunting lease actually that I killed my first buck on. He'd throw me in his truck, and we'd drive down there to go hunting, and then he somehow figured out how to buy a place on the Yellowstone River in Paradise Valley outside of Livingston, Montana. And I spent at least a month, certainly when I was, age 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that kind of time frame, like fishing on the Yellowstone with the fly rod. And so those are kind of bouncing between South Texas, Port Connor, and Montana is really what I grew up doing.
And that kind of like set the foundation to make you the angler that you, I guess, were when you got into it heavily, right? When you were in college.
Yes. Yeah. And so then, so that's, college, you start trying to figure out, get sidetracked when there's other passions somebody develops,
desires.
Yeah. So not sure what I'm allowed to say.
You say whatever you want. I've had people who keep it 100% like chill. I've had people who want to keep it professional. Remember, this is you. We're chatting. I think the microphones aren't even here.
Yeah, sure.
Well, to an extent, right?
Yeah, to an extent. So anyway, we, as I got kind of through college, invariably somebody either inherited a boat or, bought a super cheap boat. And so I just started going with college buddies. And then after college, having a few other guys, either dads had boats or whatever that we'd borrow, and we just started, fishing Port Connor primarily. I mean, I love any type of fishing. I do any type of fishing, conventional, offshore, fly fishing, and I do, all that every year still. But at the end of the day, I'm just passionate about fly fishing. Like that's what really speaks to me. Like sight casting for a tarpon or redfish or bonefish or permit or GT. Those are things that really get me going.
It's safe to say that you've done a lot of bucket list things, right? Especially in the fly fishing industry. Would you mind giving a list of maybe some species that you would consider bucket list species that you've been able to accomplish?
Sure. It starts out with your first bonefish. So you get one of those, and then, tarpon's high on the list. So I've caught a lot of tarpon over the years. I'm trying to remember my first tarpon. My first Texas tarpon was, 5 years ago or so.
Really?
And hooked one out in the Gulf of Mexico, and I won't
Gulf of America.
I won't. Yeah, Gulf of America. So I don't want to make all my my guide buddies mad about talking about.
You don't got to give away anything. You're not supposed to.
Tarpon fishing on the Texas coast, but anyway, there's some areas that.
I mean, it's no secret we have them, but you don't have to get into details, obviously.
Yeah.
And then like more so like traveling species, stuff like that.
Yeah, and so we, so my fly fishing passions take me over to Mongolia, caught a taimen, multiple taimen over there. Been to the Seychelles a few times, and GT, giant trevallies, high on the bucket list. Blue trevallies on the bucket list. Milkfish, caught one of those. And man, I don't recommend catching another one.
Really?
Yeah, they don't get lactic acid, so they will fight like tuna does, and on a 10-weight rod that it takes a long time to get one in. You're worn out, really. But amazing fish to try to catch. Too caught Indo-Pacific permit. Of course, bonefish there, but that's they have giant bonefish too. By the way, I think the smallest bonefish I caught was 24 inches. Most of them are around 28, 30 inches.
Still, those are huge fish, honestly.
Yeah, so huge. And then triggerfish. There's a couple different species over there. So that, I mean, permit, Atlantic permit. Caught a few of those. Those are bucket list. Roosterfish, caught a few of those over the years. Big giant rainbow trout up in Alaska, caught a few of those. In fact, I had one day on the Moraine Creek where I caught 11 rainbows that were all over 28 inches. So one day of fishing.
God damn.
It was incredible.
Well, the reason I'd ask is more so because like I feel like there's such a huge difference between some of the most world-class fisheries, and I kind of wanted you to maybe kind of walk through what it was like in Mongolia, and then maybe describe, because I've had very few people that on this podcast talk about the Seychelles, guys like Harry Marcus, guys who've actually done it, very few and far between. So it's more so kind of giving an insight to like what it is, what it feels like, what the experience really is like for some of these places.
Yeah, so Mongolia, I think it takes 40 hours of travel to get there. Multiple airports, very difficult when you get into Ulaanbaatar, which is the name of the capital. You spend the night there, trying to figure out where the hell you are in the world after 40 hours of travel. And then you get on a old Russian helicopter. Yaku Lucas was with me on this trip, and we took off and landed in the middle of nowhere, about 3 hours from the capital, and had these little yurts, the little circular tents that the Mongolians have always stayed in, and they had a few boats. There were 6 of us in my fishing group plus guides. Had a few metal boats with jet motors in them, and you'd break up with your guide and another partner fisherman, and you just go up these big rivers. I mean, they're a couple 100 yards across in some spots, and narrower in others. And the thing about taimen is it's not sight casting. They call it like the fish of 1,000 casts. So you literally, your guide sets you up with some type of fly, either streamer fly, or in our case, we use something called the Cyclops, which is like a big floating type of fly that you skim across the surface. And literally you throw the fly as far as you can out there in the river, and you let it swing, and then you take 2 steps downstream.
Do it again.
And you do it again. And after 1,000 casts, you may get one or 2 rises. And you hope you're paying attention. After 9 hours of throwing, you may get 2 bites. So
does it feel vindicating to hold one?
Yes. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
So, and we, catch, like they get up to 55, 60 inches, and some places in Russia, I hear they get bigger than that. But I think I caught several over 40 inches. I had a few on that were bigger, that broke me off or shook the hook out or something. But the taimen they're kind of like muskie. You hook one, they give you a good initial fight, and then they're like, just give up, and then they come right in.
Really?
Yeah. So it's all about just lots of casting, and I finally hooked one and got it in. And they're kind of, they're the oldest trout species in the world, but they have a lot of eel in them. Like they're very flimsy.
Huh.
But anyway, it's quite an experience. Obviously, it's a long ways to go.
Yeah.
Why it's something that's on your bucket list. You check it, and I don't really care.
I want to do it again.
Yeah, I don't care to go back there.
If you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, please check out my new book, Laguna, available at select stores or can be ordered directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com.
Country's beautiful, and that's fun, but 40 hours to go cast 1,000 times and catch 2 fish a day. It like some days you catch none. That's just there's other fisheries to go to. That are more fun.
No, I mean I get that, and I guess that kind of segues us into maybe like the Seychelles or something like that.
Yeah. So the Seychelles, like that's something if somebody had the money and the time, you want to go every year.
Yeah.
It just the whole experience is incredible. Again, it's also a long ways to get to. It's probably 35 hours plus or minus. It depends which island, which atoll you end up at. But we've been to Cosmolito Atoll, and you literally are out there in the middle of the Indian Ocean when you finally get to your final destination. I mean, just to give a perspective, Cosmolito Atoll is 300 nautical miles from Madagascar in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You've once you get to the Mahi, which is the capital of the Seychelles, you get on a puddle jumper, you hopscotch to a couple islands, you land on the farthest island you can get to, which is there's a military base there. The world-renowned Seychelles Air Force has a strip on a small atoll called Alphonse, and you go from there. You get on a boat, and you have about a 2-hour boat ride across a channel to get to Cosmolito Atoll. So what, like you're, it feels like you've gone to Mars.
I can only imagine.
And then on the atoll, it's shallow inside the atoll, so you have the beautiful blue water. And it's just incredible. There's 100,000 or more turtles swimming around everywhere. And with that, they attract tiger sharks. So you see lots of tiger sharks swimming around, chasing them. The tides are 7 feet. So you're going to start out fishing in one area, and you better be out of that area, or you're going to be
swimming
high and dry, or even worse, swimming. So everybody, when you got out to go wade fishing, you always had your Yeti backpack that you could float with
if need be.
Yeah, if the guides had misjudged the tides. But that's you get these terrors, these giant trevallies just ripping by, trying to kill stuff and to eat stuff, and once you come across one, they're super aggressive. So you just got to get your fly somewhat near it, strip it in as fast as you can, keep it moving the whole time, and they peel off. They peel off and they come right at it and hit it.
What was the biggest one you've landed?
So the biggest one I landed was 70 pounds.
How many inches are centimeters?
That's,
I feel like they always measure in centimeters, so I asked.
It was 50-something inches.
Okay.
So in centimeters, I'd have to get a calculator.
I think it's 2.2, so like 110, 101, something like that. Damn, big fish.
Yeah.
I think that sounds right, yeah, but yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just guesstimating at this point.
So I think I think it was 58 inches or something like that.
God damn.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
You catch like the bigger ones. It's rare to catch them out on the flats. You can, and especially if you're on the ocean side, you're gonna see the bigger ones coming by more. But we were just drifting over some of the deep waters in the atoll where the coral heads are, and just kind of chunking. Again, as far as you can throw a fly, and it's windy and stuff, so it's not easy. But we're chunking a fly and then strip, and trying to pull one off one of these coral heads, and just got lucky, and a big one came up, and grabbed the fly, and then I was with Yaku Lucas again on that trip. So Yaku and I are good buddies. And our guide starts up the motor, and we kind of kept cutting this jeet off from wrapping around coral heads and breaking your fly line off.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so after about 20 minutes, they're kind of like a jackfish. I mean, I guess they probably are a jackfish, or at least Texas speak. They're kind of like an oversized jackfish.
Yeah.
So after a while, they finally start giving up. So about 25, 30 minutes later, he was tiring out, and we kind of pulled him to the boat and ran to a shallower spot and took a bunch of pictures. It was
I can only imagine. That's so cool.
It is super cool.
Well, I feel like we should definitely start segueing a little bit towards the company that Dagon is. And I do want to talk about Mutter boots, mostly because that concept was so alien to me. And then I saw the videos, and there's spots where I've often wondered, I'm like, I could use those, like, actually. And so, like, I'm curious as to the story behind all that. I want you to decide what you want to talk about first. You want to talk about Dagon? Do you want to talk about Mutter?
Why don't we? Let's talk about Dagon and Mutter. I mean, they're kind of intertwined in some ways. So Dagon was basically born as an authentic brand that kind of represents Texas, and specifically fishing in shallow water, like jumping off the bow of a skiff and walking so you can go catch a crawler. Like that's kind of where all this came from. And so if you think about, you're asking about Mutter boots, which are boots made to walk in the mud. And I was trying to, and fishing in some of the tournaments the fly fishing tournaments that I have on the Texas coast. I mean, some of the big crawlers there, you're like, God, I can't push my boat any shallower. I got to get to this thing. And so, I used to jump off the boat and start wading, and that, as many of us know, the mud is
deep really quickly.
Is unbelievable. And so, like, all right, how do I solve getting to that redfish? And so, one, you want a shirt that you don't have all this, like you can put like a box of flies in and some extra leader. So you don't like, you're just going to walk 50 yards, 20 yards, maybe 100 yards from your boat. So our shirts were really kind of designed to be, put a couple things in it, have some extra pockets, throw them in there so you don't have a bunch of other stuff. And typically when you see a crawler, you have to just get off your boat and go. And so I used to wade through the mud, and you sink down. Yeah, you'd sink down some spots. I mean, almost all the way to your groin.
Yeah, I've lost quite a few Crocs, a few pairs of Crocs doing that.
Yeah, and it'd be 2-3 inches of water. The rest is just mud. And so I started Googling, boots for mud or something like that, and I came across Mutter Boots, which was a business with that two old guys had started. I mean, they started when they were younger, but when I called them, I actually bought a pair, and I put them on, went to Port O'Connor, and I was like, man, I'm walking all over the place, catching crawlers and not stinking down in the mud. I was like, wow, this is an incredible product. Yeah. So I called the owner. There's two owners, but I called one of them, picked up the phone. He was 78 years old. His partner was older than that. And I was just like, man, these things are wonderful. Like, how long you been in business? And just got to talking with him. He's like, son, man, you're pretty passionate about this. If we're getting so old, would you want to buy our company? And I said, well, I was actually just calling to order some more pairs and learn more about it. But sure, I'll look at anything. So, and I've been like my day job, I tell everybody, is I've been in the private equity business. So I've been buying companies and selling companies over a long period of time now. So this was nothing for me to just have a conversation about buying somebody's company. So I was like, sure, send me some financial information. And they were selling about 1,000 pairs a year, which is really what we sell. We don't really market it.
I was going to say, I feel like I never saw marketing about it.
Yeah. So they sell them off the website. You can't find them in any retail stores. And as I dug into diligence, I mean, you have like military groups buying this product that are around the world. Like we're in Australia, we're in parts of Asia. The UK people, the clammers really like them. And then of course here in the States, you have, duck hunters and forestry guys and rescue folks. And then guys like me that are fishing, that are trying to wander around in mud, trying to get to a certain fish or get to, to do something where we like without them, we can't really walk around. So the shirts, so Dagon was kind of born as hey, I don't like Columbia shirts, they're too baggy. Let me have something that's a little more designer friendly and a little lighter material because it's hot down here, and but something that's kind of authentic that throw it on like what you're doing when you're wearing Dagon stuff, and then just owning a pair of the Mutter boots, it led me to buying the business, and then so to me was all born out of how do I go catch that crawler that I can't get a boat to.
Yeah, it's funny. I still think anyone listening probably doesn't grasp how interesting and how cool the Mutter boots really are. Like I remember the first time I saw the video because I was like on the Dagon website and I had said like sister companies on the bottom, and I was like, what is this? And so I clicked on the first one and I saw the video, and it was kind of like, it's like, God damn. And like you look at the design and it makes so much sense. It's like, why was this not thought of before? And obviously it was thought of before, right? But that was just crazy to me, like crazy. But it's super cool. Like I definitely think that should be marketed from your guys' perspective, or from my perspective, sorry. Like for sure, especially for Texas guys, 100% for Texas guys.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something we are working on. Brought a new guy on to be head of marketing for us. I mean, we've just been a small company that's just an authentic company making really good products, and not focused on the marketing part of it yet. But that's, as we've starting to grow and kind of hit our stride, brought on head of marketing, and we're doing a lot better videos and producing a lot more material to help us basically grow our brand. And that's on both sides. That's on the Dagon apparel side as well as on the Mutter boot side. Yeah, no. One of the coolest things I can appreciate about the brand is that it doesn't shy away from being modern. I think that a lot of companies tend to try to use modern stuff, but they'll go more for like a traditional look, stuff like that. And that's great and dandy and all. But I think it's cool that, again, Dagon feels like you're wearing like high tech shit. To put it simply, like it's the best way to put it. But I digress. That was just one of the things I was thinking of right now. Man, I don't know. I think that this sounds silly, but like the wave of the bamboo shirts and stuff like that, like I think they're great. I can wear them when it's cold, but for some reason I sweat too much. And so like it gets way too sticky and whatever. And so like I see like people that I know personally, like Jared and stuff, when they're with Free Fly now, or he's with Free Fly, but it's like, I remember when I bought those shirts, and I still have some, and I wouldn't dare wear them when it's hot. So it's like I like real, truly breathable things that shy away from the comfort, more comfort thing, but more so like the bamboo-esque stuff. Because for a while, it felt like everything was going bamboo. I don't know if you felt the same way. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. I'm thinking about my experience wearing a bamboo shirt. They're actually great. You're right. They get way too hot. They're fine when the weather's cooler, but then you don't want to get them wet. Like if you jumped out of a boat and went wading in them and they got wet, they just hold water. Yeah. And then you get back on, you're like, God, this thing just won't dry. Like I got this thing that's wet all day long on me. Yeah. I just have not ever gotten into that type of material. One of the things I like to really ask every single guest individually is like, as in your own journey as
an individual, well, I guess I said that already. Who were some like players that were kind of key motivators for you? Like you mentioned Uncle Lex, and you mentioned I think your dad as well. But like other people that may have helped you through your journey, people who may have inspired Dagon, stuff like that. Any names? Any?
Yeah. So I'll throw out like there's a few guys that come to mind. I mean, my Big Daddy is my grandfather. That I'll just throw him out there.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of I have my own skiffs. Like I could probably be a guide down on the Texas coast. I've spent so much time down there, and I have a house in the Florida Keys. And been chasing tarpon down there for years, but and have boats down there as well. But there's a guide that I've kind of grown up with. He and I are the same age, mid-50s, and his name's Todd Brubaker. We call him Otis and give him a shout out. But he does like no social media, no nothing. Like he'd be near impossible to find, but he's a heck of a good fisherman, and he guides out of Gunnison for basically the summer months, and then he moves down and lives on Big Pine Key, where that's where I have a house at. He actually I have two houses there. He lives in one during the tarpon season, really, and takes care of my other house. And he's just a good friend of mine, and we've been fishing for 20 years on the Taylor River outside of Gunnison, as well as Big Pine Key area, the Florida Keys. And he's like, I've really grown with fishing with him.
Interesting. Like level wise, or more so like getting to know them as an angler, and more so as a guy on the back as well.
Just like all the above.
Okay.
Like he's like, hey, like just little tricks of the trade that that guides know that like on a river, just how to read water a little better. What flies to tie and what sizes and like things that like I know, but like when that's his job, like, and he does it every day, like he's gonna know more than me
for sure.
And so I've always learned from him, and then just little tips like down like saltwater fishing with him. How you cast better into the wind, as we all know. Like how do you punch a 60-foot cast in 25-mile-an-hour winds? Like for lots of people, that is super, super hard. But once you have to be really technically proficient, and you have to like keep your line, lower over the water than you normally. And there's just little tricks that I've picked up from him.
Like a Bulgarian cast type deal. Gotcha.
Yeah, just how to catching tarpon, especially on the ocean front and the Keys, they can be extremely hard to get to eat a fly. And just where you put that, how you think about it, which fly do you choose to throw, and what month, and things like that. Like those are all like neat little tricks that as you grow as an angler, they're good to know, and it just makes you overall a better fisherman. Is
there anybody like that in your life on the Texas side of things, or is that just for your Florida front, like Florida and then Gunnison, obviously? So,
I mean, Texas, I think I started talking about this earlier, but I've been fly fishing for redfish on the Texas coast since I was 8. Like I think I've taught myself.
Well, it's not that. It's what people you fish with now, where you're like, you kind of look forward to people who I kind of go back and forth with, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe a better way to put it.
I've never fished with a guide, a fly fishing guide on the Texas coast. Like I've never had one. Like Yaku Lucas and I are good friends. I go out with him, but he's not technically guiding me. We're just out friends, just going fishing around. In fact, he and I mean, he guides out of Port Connor now. And, I think when he first started going, I took him out and showed him a few spots, and then he's, figured out the water himself and has his own program when you go out with him. But, and he's would be another person that I fish with, around the world, from the Seychelles to Mongolia, and we're we're going to Bolivia here later this year, actually, to chase golden dorado, and we're going to work on doing an Australia trip together. So, like, he's somebody. I mean, he's one of the best anglers that I've ever seen.
What makes him one of the best anglers you've ever seen?
I mean, just from a casting standpoint, like, I've never seen somebody that can cast like him. Like he starts, like, he can throw flies into 30-mile-an-hour winds all the way into the backing. He can throw it past the normal fly line, way into the backing, into strict winds, and he's just a very, very fishy guy.
Have you ever gotten into distance casting or seen it at all?
No. I mean, distance is nice to be able to throw something long, but that doesn't mean you're going to catch more fish.
I'm not saying that it does, but I am saying that, like, to become someone who can throw 120, 130, technically up to 150, we were just throwing MEDs, especially with a 5-weight, like, you definitely have to excel at, like, tracking and stuff like that and whatnot. I had a conversation with Rick Hartman the other day, so like a year and a half ago. And we were talking a little bit about practicing and stuff like that, because that's one of the things I do when I get really, really bored. Well, right now I broke my 5-weight, so I've been out of commission for a couple months. But one of the things that we talked about, and I was giving him, like, I was playing devil's advocate. I was like, well, Rick, like, it does make sense. You know, people do say, like, okay, great, you can cast 100 foot, but can you perform between 20 to 40? And he goes, well, technically, like, the longer you can cast, then the better your tracking becomes. Because when you're holding 86 foot of line, 92 foot of line, like, you have to be damn perfect when you're doing that. Especially because Rick Hartman was the first person to ever actually hold over 87, 88 foot of running, or technically running, of running line all the way through in the middle of the air, which is, like, unheard of. And it was all because he kind of changed the whole degree, the arc, from very like this to like that. It's very, very cool when you see the physics and how the loop morphs and stuff. But I was just wondering, because if you like people who can cast far, it might be something that you might get into.
Yeah. I'm not really into how far I can cast it as how many fish can I catch. But I'm just saying, like,
I misunderstood it then. That's on me. My bad.
Yeah. Like in the Seychelles, like, you know, when you're trying to catch, like, the really big jeets, they're in deeper water, and you need to throw the fly as far as you can, so your fly is in the water as long as possible.
Interesting.
So that's kind of where I was going with
Gotcha.
all that.
That makes total sense. One of the things that you like to do a little bit of, and I say that haphazardly, is tournament fishing. Do you want to get into a little bit of that, some of the first ones and some of the tournaments that we talked about beforehand?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not, you know, I've never got into the Florida Keys, you know, tarpon, Gold Cup, some of the permit tournaments that they have. Maybe one day. I've definitely been thinking about it, but that takes a lot of time, and time I don't have to give at this point, but maybe later. But on the Texas coast, you know, it's in my backyard. I've fished in 2 different tournaments there out of Puerto Conner. One's the old Poco Bueno. Some people may remember that. It was a 50-year-old offshore tournament that morphed into an inshore category that had over 100 boats in the inshore. The offshore had, you know, at its heyday, had over 100 boats. And then one of the grandsons of the Fondren family that founded the tournament, he's a big fly fisherman too. He's a little bit younger than me. He started a fly fishing division at Poco, and that started in, I want to say, the early 2000s. And I think the family, I guess, was moved out of Puerto Conner, and they let the tournament go in its 50th year, which is disappointing for all those that love fishing in it. But, you know, people move on in life. But anyway, we had a partner there, Camp Bailey, like very, very dear friend of mine. And he and I love fly fishing. So he and I have kind of partnered together. And over the years, we've, won 4 or 5 different Poco Bueno fly fishing division tournaments. Usually there's 30 boats or so in that tournament, and come in second, third multiple times.
What's of all those tournaments that you participated in, just in this one tournament, what was the year that sticks out the most to you, even if you won or even if you lost?
Well, the last year sticks out the most because we had set our own personal best. So it's a 2-day tournament. You get to weigh 3 fish each day, so 6 fish total. We had somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, 36 pounds. If you had that much in redfish, you would win. We had 40 pounds worth of fish, although one was like 28 and a half kind of thing that,
It's a little iffy.
We thought he had shrunk enough, and like literally, like we're out before we go to the weighmaster, we're out. I mean, I was stretching it. I couldn't, like, it had shrunk. It was under 28 inches on our ruler, and we're like, you know what? Let's go hit our own personal best. And so we bring our 6 fish. Like we had other ones that we could have used, and we would have won the tournament if we, I guess come to our senses and just use a 26 incher. But anyway, we were pushing it. And this was the last. At the time, nobody knew it was going to be the last year. But
I was going to ask if you guys knew it was going to be the last one. I was like,
no,
screw it. Let's go as hard as we can.
If I'd known, we would have taken the 26 incher and used that instead of trying to push a 20 inch, hit our personal best. But anyway, so we get up there. The weighmaster like drops his fish, like almost like he purposely threw it there. He must have like broke the spine or something when he threw it down, and so when he stretched it out, it went over 28 inches pretty easy. I mean, we couldn't get it past 28 ourselves, and so he's like, "This is disqualified." So we it was terrible. So we didn't even place in the last year of the tournament, but like we had the thing won. So my good friend. I'm friends with the Cedar brothers. They're also big Port O'Connor guys. So Ryan and his partner won that year, and so they were very thankful that we tried to push the limit. Yeah. So anyway, but that's kind of my last memory. But there's so many good things, and it's really, I mean, it's just the competition of it all. The other tournament we fish in out of Port O'Connor is called the Masters Cup. James Cadlick started the tournament. It was primarily to kind of keep all of us Port O'Connor guys going, and he was doing it. Was the Poco Bueno fly fishing tournament was going on, and then James was kind of having a second one going on same year, different time of the year. And when Poco Bueno canceled, James kind of took over that spot. It's like the third week in July every year. It's a couple-day tournament. It's a little different rules and stuff. But I had my partner Hardy Murkison. He and I won the first year of the tournament and the second year of the tournament. And I think I've only fished in it 6 or 7 times. It's been going on for 10 or 12 years. But I'm starting to figure out my schedule better and be able to fish in it more. So last year. Partnered up with my friend Camp Bailey, who he and I won several of the Poco Bueno tournaments, and I think we came in 5th out of 30-something boats. Last year we won the second day, but had a little slow start on the first day. So, but anyway, I'm coming. I'm going to get back up there again.
I've always wanted to fish those tournaments, but like the big multi-day ones. So, one of my favorite ones to fish is La Mosca. It's one of the few ones that I do consistently fish, no matter like what I'm doing in the year, because I've been there since like the first year. But I've always been a fan of competing, and one of the things I like so much about that tournament is that they're like, not that they're starting to get recognized, but like they just set up their 501c3, like they're doing their own things now, and it's like. It's exciting, and it's a catch and release tournament too. So it's like, it's hard not to want to be a part of it. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
I love that tournament.
Yeah. And these tournaments are now they're catch and release.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just taking pictures and things like that, which is fine.
Did you ever get into like speckled trout fishing?
With the fly rod?
No.
Okay.
Just in general.
Yeah. So, I enjoy conventional fishing. Like, you find a good day, go out to the surf, like, anchor your boat, jump out, wade the first or second, sand, or wade from the
That's
beach.
our bars. Yeah.
Yeah, or fish the second sandbar. I do that a lot when the weather's right, and then I like a good wade fish day in the bay. Go catch trout and reds, throwing topwaters and stuff. So yeah, so I still do all that.
You hit your dirty 30 yet?
I have the biggest trout I've caught is 29 inches.
Oh, you're right on the limit.
Yeah. So I just am, I'm typically, out of 10 days of fishing, 9 days I'm fly fishing, and 1 day I may be doing conventional. So,
you should get connected with Ben Pascal. I feel like you and Ben Pascal would get along really, really well. Not to mention he could put you on some big trout. Yeah. For sure.
So, we, going down to the Laguna area and Mansfield and Baffin, those are those are further south than my normal stomping grounds. But I love fishing Mansfield. Love some of the areas south, or I guess north of Mansfield, Gladys Hole, and
I've very seldom ever been there. Never even been 9 Mile
and all that. I mean, it's a heck of a run to get there. Like, you drive through a lot of awesome water to fish. So it's like, why even drive all the way down there? But it's a neat fishery. Totally.
I've always wanted to go up farther north. I've always wanted to go fish 9 Mile, especially in my new boat. But it's such an unlikely thing for me to do, especially launching out of South Padre. Right. You want me to run 2.5? Get out of here! I'm not running 2.5 hours.
Right.
So especially like if it gets windy, no, miserable. So no, thank you. I don't want to be pegged to the King Ranch shoreline all day. This is not what I want to do. But it's on my bucket list. Like, one day eventually I'm gonna be like, all right, like, we're gonna do it. Like, there's no way I'm not gonna do it. But I haven't convinced myself yet.
Yeah, exactly.
How many experiences or days or moments have you fished in down where kind of like my water is, like Lower Laguna, stuff like that, Mansfield?
I have a friend of mine that's a member of the Mansfield Club, and he occasionally our calendars lined up. He fishes down there a bunch, and I end up going sometime in August, usually for a weekend, 2 days, 3 days type of fishing with them. But that's once a year. So I have a place down south of Falfurus in South Texas, a ranch we go quail hunting and nilgai hunting and deer hunting and stuff on. So like, I'm down in that part of the world often, but I'm not focused on fishing, typically when I'm down there. So
it's like fall, winter.
I'm going to have to come fish with you.
That'd be cool. Obviously be down. I'm going to be there pretty much full time from starting in August.
Yeah.
So I'm down to do that. And now I'll also be doing, like, I think I got called today to do a shoot for some quail hunting near that area as well. So it's kind of exciting because I've never shot quail, like, at least with a camera anyways. So it's like one of those things where, like, okay, like, I want to do it.
Oh yeah, super fun.
Yeah. One of the things I like about Dagon is that it's not only fishing, but then you also have like the hunting side of it too. And I think that is one of the things that, again, where more companies would actually shy away from the modern look, but even the hunting stuff looks modern. That's one of the things I've always, and I know I've said it already, but I am a fan of the modern stuff. Like, I love traditionalism, I love history. If you can't even tell, I have the podcast, right? But at the end of the day, I think evolution is also really, really cool.
Yeah. So we're starting to build our brands, like, taking off. People are kind of getting what we're about, which is just we're just authentic. Like, that's the best way for me to describe it. Like the owner, me, I guess, and the people that are involved with us. Like, we are all about, like, the true sportsman.
Interesting.
Like, and so it's a natural extension to get into upland bird shirts, which is where we're starting. Making shirts for quail hunting down there in South Texas. But obviously you can wear them anywhere. It's a little thinner material, as we got some hot, warmer days down South Texas.
It was like 104 like a week ago.
Yeah, so
we're in the middle of or in the beginning of April. Like, oh my God.
You can start out at 40 degrees in the morning, and then by 9 a.m. it's 75, 80 degrees already. So,
yeah.
So our stuff is meant to throw on, layer, and then peel off the layers as it gets a little warmer. We want to make really high quality products that the true outdoorsman, is going to appreciate. And that's kind of what
specifically for the Gulf of America. No, I get it.
Yeah, Gulf of America.
Man, I like that though. I like that. I feel like, and actually, there's a question for you. So already knowing that like Dagon and Mutter Boots are going to have to go into like a more push heavier into marketing, where do you fall on how social media has affected the industry of fly fishing? Because I feel like, being someone who's been able to fish for so long and being in the sport for so long, granted, I'm for sure going to assume that for me, it's maybe like half a decade to a decade, you were doing your own thing, working on school and stuff. You weren't really paying much attention, but you've definitely seen the industry change. Where do you fall on how social media affects the industry?
Man, it's
a loaded question, but it should be an honest answer.
It's a loaded question, and that's deep. I have two thoughts going on at once. That's why I'm like pausing, stuttering even. But one is I have an issue, and I'm trying to just make sure I say all this right, since it's a podcast. But I don't think people should be sharing secrets about fishery that guides or the anglers that have come to really understand these. It kind of breaks my heart that people share like secrets that are learned over a long time.
I have a really good story to tell you after this podcast.
So, and I hope I'm saying this right, because at the same time, that's why I'm saying I have two thoughts about this. At the same time, it is educational for people to learn more about fishing and to follow their passion and get better at it. So it's like a very fine line about sharing too much, but sharing enough. And so that's something that like we're like when we do our shoots and whatnot, like we think about that. Like we want to show people, how cool our products are, and we're on some great fisheries and stuff, but we don't want to like give all the secrets about exactly where the shoot's going on, or there's just certain things that we're mindful of, because we know people make a livelihood out of it, and we don't. We just want to be careful about sharing too much about secrets that guides and anglers have learned over a long period of time. But that's there's a lot of people feel all kinds of ways about this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's funny. You kind of gave a similar consensus to what Peter Capel said when I did the episode with him, where people apparently he was catching flack because he like gave away like a spot or two in a film, right? But his point was, well, if I can't show you where we are, and I can't show you, because it's not like he's going out of his way saying, here are the coordinates. Or if you know the area, you'll figure it out. But for the layman, if you will, or a better way to put it, just people who don't fish in the area, it's likely they won't know it. But his whole thing was, well, if I can show you how beautiful this area can be and what it can hold and how important it is to the fishery, then in a moment where it might need saving, or maybe the fishery as a whole might be like at threat, think of things like Formosa and stuff like that. Maybe the stuff that I've shown you will also allow someone, or maybe the stuff I've put out there will allow someone who doesn't spend 200 days in the same fishery to also advocate for it in terms of like, political stuff. So, it's very similar to kind of what you just said. I mean, it is education, but there is like the little bit of like people who might take it the wrong way, like, you gave away this leaf blade was falling at this degree. They know it's this coordinate. Like, chill, like, but I also get it.
Yeah.
So there is a dichotomy there for sure, like without a doubt. But I've always been curious, especially since you guys are looking into marketing so seriously. So I was wondering where you fell on that.
Yeah. So we're going to try to educate, but also be respectful of the areas and the fishery that we're doing shoots out of.
Absolutely. So we are closing on the hour. We can easily run it for a couple more, at least 15, 20, 30. That's not a problem. I kind of wanted to do a hard segue here, though. What is one of the things that maybe people who get to fish with you still don't know about you?
Well, I am a private guy, so I don't I try to be as modest as I can. That's how I've been raised. So yeah, I don't share lots of things going on. So, but, I mean, if you want to get something out of me today, I typically have a lot more going on. And I'll get into that in a second, but I typically have a lot more going on than what I let on. So for instance, we have, I own several businesses. They have thousands of employees, collectively. One business operates in Africa and in Zambia in the tourism business. We run safaris. There's employ 300 people in Zambia, and the whole business is about conservation. So,
how'd you pick up that business?
So I love the outdoors. But
it wasn't a mud or boots type deal where you're like, hey, I love what y'all are doing. Hey, you want to buy the company?
No, I mean, if you wanted me to get in a little bit, it goes back to, I've been fortunate to have some success in life. Certainly maybe at a little earlier age than some people achieve it. And my wife and I started thinking, well, we got one child left in our house. He's going to be going off to college here in a couple of years. What do we want to spend time and money in a cause that we're passionate about? And so helping uplift the communities in Africa, and at the same time, you have to do that in order to help the wildlife. So, we're focused on trying to save wildlife in the Luangwa Valley in Zambia, which basically means helping reduce poaching, and you got to give, you got to help bring the villagers, the local communities. You got to uplift them in terms of providing opportunities, healthcare, clinics, education, and food and things like that. So they think about how wildlife is helping them, and not so, hey, we are subsistence living, and we need some bush meat.
Is there a big issue with poaching you find with your safari?
I mean, throughout the continent of Africa, there's poaching.
I'm just curious if you had to deal with it. That's why.
So, I'm not sure what you mean by me have to deal with it, but yeah.
For example, when I did a podcast with John Dunaway, he talked a little bit having to deal with pirates and stuff, and how they had to work on security measures and stuff like that, and then dealing with the bureaucracy that was telling them you can't have guns, no bullets, and they're kind of sitting ducks. So I was wondering if there was anything similar in that kind of aspect, because I've never asked anyone anything about owning a safari. So all this is uncharted territory to me. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So. Me personally has never chased a poacher down. So, but I've been funding the game scouts that come across poachers, during their patrols.
Have they told you any cool stories?
And, they chase them down, and, they're using our vehicles or, to drop game scouts off where they've come across signs of poaching, and they're taken off, and when they capture them, they're bringing them back, and they're putting them in the vehicles that we loan out to the Department of National Parks and Wildlife in Zambia. and helping them out. And we're funding the business. The Bush Camp Company is the name of the photographic safari business we have. It's all the profits we make get plowed into anti-poaching and give them back to the communities. And there's a group there that we work with called Conservation South Luenga, and that organization works directly with Department of National Parks and Wildlife in Zambia on running patrols and flying helicopters and airplanes over South Luenga National Park, and doing an awesome job of preventing poaching from going on. But it's an everyday deal, and it's not just in that park. It's all over Zambia. It's all over every country there.
I can imagine.
So, and that's I mean, the elephant poaching, and that's professional poaching going on. And that's a different program. But I'm just like, the bushmeat poaching is just people trying to make a living to feed their families. And so it's like, it needs to be stopped if you want to protect the wildlife. And the way you got to stop that is you got to uplift those communities and give them other opportunities where they're not worrying about, putting food on their, on the plate of their loved ones. Mm-hmm. So you kind of understand how people get into that type of poaching, and you feel sorry for it, but it absolutely needs to be stopped.
Yeah, we can't enable it either.
So, yeah.
One of the things that you showed me when we walked around this office was that you're quite you're quite a fan of art, right?
That's correct.
What are some of your pieces that you're most proud of owning?
So I love Western art. I'm a collector of it, and specifically, besides some old cowboy paintings and things like that, I like wildlife, and so we have, here in my office, have permit and tarpon and bonefish art. I have lions and Cape buffalo art. I have American bison and grizzly bears and elk and mountain lions chasing mule deer and things like that. So I just passionate about the outdoors. I mean, I think that's probably coming across loud and clear.
It has been for the last hour. So,
over the course of a year, I probably fly fishing 45 to 60 days a year, here and there on weekends here, just going to have a home in the Keys and down on the Texas coast, and other travels around the world, chasing fish, different types of fish with fly rods. And then, love my time in South Texas, shooting birds or, occasional nilgai. We love nilgai. I'm sure you're a big fan of it too. It's one of the best meats on the planet to eat. I chase those with a double rifle. So got to sneak up, get 50, 60 yards from them.
Yeah.
So that's
Have you heard of the nilgai? The nilgai, quote unquote, hunting that goes on the King Ranch shoreline?
You mean out of a boat?
Out of an airboat?
I've heard of that, but I don't know much about it.
And I don't know how right I am here, because I've barely ever talked to people about it, but I heard that they cracked down on it really hard recently. Like, there was something going on with people who were running those hunts, and turns out that they were doing it all completely wrong, or maybe there was some other stuff involved, but they shut it down completely. So now that I don't even think you can do it anymore. I could be wrong though. Then again, it's not my expertise. It's something I heard recently.
Yeah, I'm on the Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation board, and we have 4 meetings a year, and we get updates from the game wardens, and so yes, that's come up, and there's lots and lots of issues that the game wardens deal with. So I've heard about it.
Yeah, what do you think about the TPWD almost getting cut out?
I thought that was terrible.
Right.
So it got shut. That whole thing got shut down.
You know what's crazy?
Really quick.
They were doing, and now I feel like I can stand by this a little bit more. But they were going to switch TPWD for DPS, and so all of last year, they started doing DPS training in in the Arroyo. So all the little tarpon spots that I like to go check that, guys like Craig Oatman have showed me, you'd be getting burned over by DPS. And I used to ask some of my friends, or I even asked Patrick Murray, who, is the national president of CCA. And at the time he wasn't sure either. But then you see this and it was like, I've been saying that for like a year and a half. Like, he goes, John Pilmer was the first person to tell me about it. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't want to be right. But like, oh.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that's crazy to me. That's scary. On a side note, it's completely off topic, but since we're closing in on the end, like I feel like we can go a little off topic. Did you see that they were able to resurrect the direwolf?
I saw that.
Do you have any idea how insane that is?
Yes.
Like actually, like
yeah.
With AI, I'm obviously this isn't the topic of the podcast, right? But like I was learning about it the other day, and it's so impressive. And for a split second, you start to wonder, what if we could have like buffalo in Texas? Like, what if we could have like the stuff that was like running the plains, like true extinct animals, and like reinvigorating so many different things that again have gone extinct. It's a really cool concept to like think about. I don't know.
Yeah, that could go on for a 2-hour podcast talking about is that an ethical thing to do or not? But
it's a tough one.
It is a cool thing. It's a cool thing to ponder. But how it could lead to other changes, who knows? I mean, we could debate that forever. I'd love to give just a shout out to the Texas Parks and Wildlife group. Please. Now that we're talking about it. But we, kind of being on the inside of it, and as well as just traveled around the different states, Texas is really blessed.
Oh, absolutely.
With this organization. Like, everybody is aligned in the department to protect our passions, which are, the love for the outdoors, whether that be fishing, hunting, just going to the parks. It's an amazing what that organization does. Yeah. And other states are less fortunate than us because they have like commissioners that get on that become commissioners. They may be anti-hunting folks, and like they're just trying to kill like good things going on in other people's states. Here in Texas, like in order to be part of kind of the commissioner group, you have to be a super avid outdoorsman, and that's kind of gets passed on. And then the whole organization, from just the executive director all the way down to the folks that take care of the parks and the game wardens. There's over 500 game wardens, and I mean, it's a wonderful organization.
Yeah, no, it's funny when I feel like I've learned a lot, with this project. But one of the things I used to take a stand against was, and it's funny, you can hear it in the early podcast, I used to talk so much about how I felt like TPWD and CCA were making the wrong decisions and stuff. And I had never really looked at it from their side in regards to who was involved and how the decision process happens and stuff like this. And so when I spent time talking to guys like Shannon Tompkins, and I don't know how familiar you are with Shannon. So Shannon was one of the most awarded writers in Texas, or I think in the United States. But it was because of his work on conservation. And he was the one who kind of told me, he was like, Andres, you got to understand that, like, had it not been for the TPWD, like, we would have been screwed. More so also GCCA at the time. But what he was getting at was, and I think he said it, I'm pretty sure he said it on the podcast, I don't know which way he phrased it though, but TPWD was the first or the most successful in terms of conservation versus any other one that we can pit it against, which is extremely impressive when you really start to think about it, considering we were the trailblazers in something that was deemed not necessary to be ethical at the time. Yeah. Like, it was going against the beaten path, or going on the beaten path, if you will.
Yeah. And we, like, the TBWD, I mean, just circling us all the way back to fishing on the coast. I mean, one of the main thrust right now is for them to continue to buy up some of the oyster licenses and retire those. And those oyster reefs, like, clean our bays. Yeah. Like, and provide they help support our fisheries. They're so vital to our whole coastal fisheries system. And they're like right now, TPWD is highly focused on this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the more success they have at it, the more oyster reefs we're going to have, the cleaner our bays are. And it's just going to help produce more fish, essentially.
No, I totally agree. Or at least higher quality water. One of the things I never understood is why we haven't. This is something I should have asked Pat, or I should have asked Shannon, or not Shannon, but Shane Bonneau, was I still have yet to understand why we don't focus solely on Galveston and trying to reinvigorate the oysters in Galveston, because that was one of our biggest areas of oysters. Not to mention it was tarpon capital of like the world for a while. But yeah, that's one thing that's always puzzled me. But then again, after being wrong so many times, it's hard for me to take a hard stance, because at the end of the day, I realize that it's very hard to be bipartisan if you're going at it from a different angle. Like if I'm going at it like, oh, they should be doing da da da. No, I just don't think that's the right way to do it. So that's why I've been a lot more open minded about it. Well, we are at, you got to do the math. 23. We're at 1 hour 10 minutes. Is there anything you want to say before we start to kind of run the last two questions?
No, I think it's gone okay so far.
Hey, we're chilling. We're having a good time. Okay. Well, the last two questions that I always ask are always the same. The first one being, looking back on everything that you've done in your life, granted, from doesn't have to be from the very beginning, but just in general, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently, or things that you wish maybe you wouldn't have done at all? You can use the word regret if you want, but I tend to find that it has too much of a negative connotation.
I mean, I've tried to live my life where I don't have any regrets. So, I mean, that's part of what I ask myself when I'm making a decision, big or small, every day is like, will I regret this decision? So when I look back, I mean, there's maybe a couple things that I wish I'd done differently. And it's probably spending, some more weekends with my kids versus, working kind of thing. But it's also enabled me to get to where I am today. But that's maybe my biggest regret. And I have an awesome relationship. I have 3 kids, and 2 are in college now, and one's in high school. And they love the outdoors like I do. But that's, like when one day when somebody was putting something on my tombstone or writing something about me when I'm gone, you're not going to say, gee, he worked hard. Like, you'd rather say he was a hell of a father.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So just spending that time. And I mean, that's maybe some advice to give to everybody is, be with your family. Life's short. Hug your kids, your wife, your friends. Like, slow down a little bit and get on a boat and go fishing with them.
So go fishing.
Yeah.
No, I'm playing.
So yeah, I'm trying to do as much as I can, but I don't want to have any regrets because I didn't do enough.
Understood. So, yeah. Okay. Well, the last question I always ask, and be a little bit of a different perspective, is talking to the younger generation, kids who may be 12, 14, 16, because to be fair, I think that's where some of the age that listens to this podcast is. What is a piece of advice that you'd give them going forward into, I typically say the outdoor industry. You can take it as the outdoor industry, but just advice for life in general.
Like career advice?
I don't care. It's your advice, not mine. But ideally outdoor related, somewhat.
So will you repeat that question?
Yeah. So let's say kids going into this side or the industry. So for example, like Dagon, Mutter Boots type deal. What is a piece of advice you'd give them going into the outdoors? Either be it guides, be it in the market, be it in retail, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
So, I mean, number one, for any career, somebody should have a passion about it. So, if you don't fall in love with something, you're probably going to stop caring at some point, or you're not going to be the best version of yourself doing it. So have a passion. If the outdoor space, if you will, whether it's being a guide, being a member of a team that's in the consumer, outdoor consumer product space. Just really dig into the details of what your job is, and then also be available to the team, and maybe take that extra step. Like go, I'd rather just run home and I'm done. But ask somebody on your team question: is there anything else I can do to help you? And if you do that enough, you'll find that you will advance in whatever you're doing, and be relied upon. And then, someday, 10, 15, 20 years, you may be the guy running the organization that you're a part of, or you may have accumulated enough knowledge to say, and I'm going to go do something like this on my own. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind, like go beyond what your main role is.
Interesting. And I like that. Like, don't be complacent in your own role. Basically, I guess that's a better way to put it, or a way to put it. I think yours was a little bit easier to understand. Well, with that being said, I mean, we have gone like an hour 15, I think, hour 16, which is about the average for what these episodes are. This has been awesome. I'm honestly really glad that you guys were able to make the time for me. That was super badass on y'all's part. And I'm just stoked that we got to do this. Ever since I talked to Luke about it over in Houston, it was something I wanted to do. So when we spoke on the phone, even though I was having to deal with other stuff, I wasn't able to fully give my attention. Like, I'm really glad that we were able to plan this up and set it up, because this has been it's been fun for me, honestly.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you for like stopping by our booth at the Houston Fishing Show and go like, who are these guys? They're intriguing. And we are kind of, I was thinking about this podcast with you. I almost think Dagon is somewhat, and I guess this happens with all founder-owned companies, is they kind of take on some of the personality of their founder. And so I'm kind of modest, want to stay out of the public attention. We want to be authentic in everything we do. We want to make super high-end products, and we want to make, as we start marketing, we want to be in the cool group. And so
I like that.
And so that's, I think, my personality at the end of the day. And I hope that Dagon and Mutter Boots reflect who I am.
Interesting.
And I think they are, with the help of the team that we're building to run those businesses.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, it seems like we have gone over everything we needed to go over. Yeah, I think all that's left is just to get on out of here.
All right.
Cool.
Well, it's been great hanging with you.
Likewise, brother.